know it's a little cliche to give a talk about being weird in Austin, but guess what? We're doing it anyway. So, yeah, it is happening. So, as Byron said, I'm the executive editor of Science Versus, where I've been for more than 8 years. Yes, so thank you. If you've heard of us, great. If not, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. Please follow, like, and subscribe. And I want to talk about being weird in part because as I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about the world of AI a little bit. And I was thinking about specifically LLMs, right? So what are they good at? What is a large language model good at? It's good at prediction. That's kind of the whole point. It's excellent at it. Like, that is what LLMs do. And something that humans can do is be unpredictable and be surprising and have surprising pops of weird and interesting stuff, things you do not expect to see or hear. And I think that is what we need to be leaning into in the podcast space. I think that's a direction we need to embrace our weird. We need to embrace what's different. And we need to lean into those moments of weird, unexpected connection. So that's the argument that I'm going to make today. And so to talk about that, a lot of people, when I was coming up with this talk, folks were like, what does that even mean to be weird? And I was like, well, here's my argument for what being weird means in the podcasting space. I would say that it means following your curiosity and leaning into your voice, whatever that is, especially the weird quirks, unusual bits and pieces of your voice, and then also taking some risks. So those are the 3 things that I identify as sort of key pillars of being weird in podcasting. And I'll talk more about that. I'll give you a case study from our show from Science Versus. So the thing about Science Versus is we are weird to begin with. We are a group of 6 weird nerds. Been working together for a long time. We make a lot of ridiculous jokes. We make a lot of references to John Wick for some reason. 30 references to John Wick in our science podcast in history. I don't know why. Jeff Goldblum, he comes up all the time. But we also tell a lot of dad jokes, and we make a lot of puns, and we just have a good time. And a large part of that is the personality of our host, Wendy Zuckerman. She's amazing. And a lot of that is driven by her. But a lot of it is also driven by the curiosity of the team that works on this show. So we have covered a ton of stuff. The show's been around for a decade, and we have covered all kinds of topics. We fear nothing, for better or worse, and we will dig into anything. But we find time and again that the episodes that resonate the most with our listeners, that people connect to the most, are the ones that we, as producers, as editors, are most excited to make. So our senior producer, Rose Rimler, she refers to it as a topic biting her brain. She's like, something has bitten my brain and I just cannot let it go. I have to do this episode. And that tends to be where we find the episodes that resonate the most with our listeners and the ones that we are most excited about. And so I'm going to talk specifically about one of those. So one of the things that we do a lot of, and I think this is partly driven by Wendy Zuckerman's curiosity, is topics related to sex, the science of sex. We've covered all kinds of stuff. We did a whole episode on blue balls or epididymal hypertension. We've done episodes on the male G-spot. We did a whole episode on anal sex. I mean, we want to dig in. We're there for it. And I want to talk about this particular episode that we did about squirting. And the story of this episode, I'm telling the story for a reason, I promise, not just to be shocking and prurient, although that's fun too. I want to talk about this episode because for years, Wendy was like, I think there's something here. I think there's some interesting science to this. What's going on with this? What is happening with this phenomenon? And we kind of batted the idea around for a while. And one of our producers was like, you know what? I think I'll take a look at it. I'll go out and I'll take a look at some of the science. And then she came back to us and she was like, let me tell you about it. And she was like, you know what? I don't actually think there's anything here. I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough for an episode. Yeah, there's a few studies, there's some research. And she was like, I just don't think we could make a whole episode about this. It hadn't been in her brain, right? And I was like, I disagree. And I was like, you know what? I want to take another look. Let me take a pass, because I was like, I just have to believe that if there's any research on this at all, there's enough for us to do an episode. So I dug into it, starting with this book, which is amazing. This is my copy. It does not have, I added the googly eyes. Unfortunately, they're not part of the original cover. But this book is amazing. German writer who wrote this book, kind of running through the science of this, right? And it starts off with the history. And people have been talking about this phenomenon and writing about this phenomenon since medieval China. I mean, you can find like texts out of India hundreds and hundreds of years ago, right? That are talking about this. And I was like, well, first of all, it's been in the zeitgeist for literal centuries. So that tells me there's something here. And second of all, there's a lot of studies in this book. You can see my post-it notes. So this is it. This is a visualization of this topic biting my brain, right? And from there, we started finding science, like research papers on this, right? And they were also fascinating. I was like, this stuff is really interesting. Like, there are scientists out here doing this science. And this paper is amazing. So there are actually scientists in Japan who, what they did is they were trying to figure out like where this fluid was coming from. And they put dye into women's bladders and then had them come into the lab. And they looked at what happened after they experienced this and like, what color is the fluid? Where is it coming from? Out there doing the Lord's work on this topic, right? So I was like, this is an episode. And we spoke to the scientist actually, and she was great. We also spoke to the world record holder in this area, which involved a very awkward email to the Guinness Book of World Records. I was like, does she hold the world record? And they were like, I'm sorry, we do not monitor those records, ma'am. This is a Wendy's. But bottom line, we fact checked it, but we trusted her on that. And then the other thing we did as part of this is we surveyed our Science Versus listeners who love to respond to our surveys we have found over the years. So almost 16,000 of our listeners responded to a survey about this. And again, science note, this is not a random sample. All caveats that come with that. But a ton of people wanted to talk to us about it. A ton of our listeners wanted to talk to us about this topic. And actually, this is not the first time we've surveyed our listeners on this stuff. Like, Science Versus listeners are the best. On a lot of our other sex health, the science of sex topics, we've done surveys like this that have actually turned into peer-reviewed academic research papers. We partner with a lab out of Queen's University in Toronto to do the academic research. So that Science Versus is a co-author on 2 papers in the academic research literature. One of them is on blue balls, and one of them is on the orgasm gap between cis hetero men and women. And we have one coming out on that episode I mentioned related to anal sex as well. So bottom line, our listeners, also amazing. They contributed to this episode. And we hired an illustrator to do some illustrations for this, because you have to listen to the episode to understand why this cicada is here. But we hired an illustrator, and this was a video episode that we made. So that was another piece of we really leaned into this topic, and we had so much fun with it. And the last thing that happened is the bookers, so we're owned by Spotify. So Spotify bookers helped us get this comic, Annie Letterman, to come on the show and learn from Wendy, our host, the science of this. And they have this amazing, delightful conversation in this video episode that we made about this topic. And what we found is that our listeners were into it. So this was one of our most popular episodes of all time. And this is just from the Spotify app, so you can see sort of the rough numbers. So just on Spotify, more than 500,000 people listened to this episode, watched this episode. And for us, this is an indication that, it's kind of a risky topic. Not everybody wants to lean into it, right? Not everybody's interested, but a ton of people are. And a ton of our Science Versus listeners are. And they were here for it. And we got a ton of good feedback. Also, from that beginning conversation where our producer was like, I don't know if this is an episode. We did almost an hour. We spent talking about this. Most of our episodes are 25, 35, 40 minutes. But we were there for a long time. And people stuck with it. And they were very excited to hear it from us. And that is why, that basically sums up the message that I want to give today, which is, not everybody is making the kind of show we're making. Not everybody is weird in the way that we are weird, as a show, as a collection of people, as a group of odd nerds. But I do think it has so much value to a listener, to your audience. They can feel your curiosity. They can feel when you're passionate about something. And they can feel when you've dug into your own individual sort of quirks and quirks as a host, as a show team, as producers, whoever you are in the process. Listeners can feel that. And I would argue that that is when it resonates with them most. So that is what I would say about being weird. I think it's important, and I think everyone should do it more. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for